by Mr. Pawan K, Design Manager in charge of new product development in L&T. He has a 16 years of industrial experience and major strengths in structural and hydraulic system designs. Has worked in design of various combat and land weapon engineering systems. Has been part of critical hydraulic system design for various systems, equipment, and closely associated with hydraulic OEMs in India and abroad. Now over to Pawan sir. So we have got a very good expertise from the L&T. Now over to Pawan sir.
Yeah. Very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So we had a very detailed session on FPSI. Now we'll get into the topic today. So this is digital twin hydraulics. So though it is a post-lunch session, I'll try to keep it as much interesting as possible. And as many will be knowing on this topic, digital twin. So this is likely, I can say, industry jargon in the recent days, we can say, or recent years. So firstly, digital twin is a broad topic, but maybe preliminary, I'll just get into the topics which is related to digital twin first, and then I'll come to hydraulics, because first we should understand what exactly is a digital twin, what it means to industry. So I'll just get into the slide. So when we see digital twin, its definition and origin. So digital twin, you can call it as a representation of physical object, process, or anything which is in your mind or a service. Anything can be converted to digital form. So that is largely, I can say, as a digital twin. So this concept of digital twin started somewhere in 1991, we can say, where there was a book by David Glenhunter. So where it was called Mirror Worlds. You can think Mirror Worlds is something like there was a requirement that it was felt in future it is going to happen the day when software will put the world or universe into a shoebox. So that was a thought process where this book reflects. And it was also a vision that it will happen that the real world will be converted into a digital form. I can say partially it has happened. And when we say in a digital form, it means it is a mirror world, not the virtual world, because mirror world is something, it is having a connect with the actual phenomenon or actual happening. So, but in virtual, it doesn't happen. And later on, Dr. Michael Greaves, he actually formally introduced digital twin concept in the year 2002, where you can see how excavator, it has got a physical version as well as a digital version. So I can say Dr. Michael Greaves was a chief scientist of is a chief scientist of advanced manufacturing in Florida, and he's the person who initiated this digital twin concept in the year 2002, during which there was a life cycle of PLM which was introduced. So that is when this concept also came into existence. Now we'll see the scenario. What exactly digital twin at this time of the century is. We can see there are four stages, which is what is expected. Earlier, the first stage was called the physical version. So when we say physical version, we had prototypes which was being made, or it was largely manufactured entities were available. That was maybe before the digital arena started. But subsequently, we had something called second stage of this digital twin, which was existing but not known to us, where we used to have a digital model, digital version of every item which is going to get manufactured or every equipment which is going to get built. So that was a two versions of digital as well as physical. So we used to see digital and then check with the physical whether the same has come out as an output or not. There could have been some changes. But now we can say the third stage, where there is a communication between digital and physical, where you can see there are sensors, IoT based systems which has come into existence in the 20th century, subsequent to which we test the equipments, we analyze the data, we again have got a communication. If we want to run anything in a digital version, we just try it out and then see what can be implemented in the physical version. So, and in that third stage, I can say we are at almost end of the third stage, where there is a communication existing seamlessly, which is thanks to cloud computing and the IoT, industrial IoT, which is came into existence. This is making this enablement is possible. Now, the next stage is going to be the fourth stage, which is the expected thing, which is going to happen in next decade, which is the digital version to physical version, where it will be associated to each other. where you will have artificial intelligence imparted to the digital version, where it will start asking questions to the physical versions, and it will keep checking the physical versions capability and its existence, prognostics on predictive maintenance, what is to be done, is it any failure is going to occur, all this will be preempted to the digital version. And through the digital version, you try to control your physical version as well. And it can be done through AI with the machine learning, what is imparted to the system. So that is what is going to be the next stage. And here we can see this is our present scenario. Largely, I can say most of the industries are getting matured to this level of present stage. So now we can just get into little history part, where we can say on the left hand of my screen, you can see the industry 1.0. Maybe somewhere around we started this journey in 18th century, where we can say there was only steam and water used as a power source, and all mechanical engineering, whatever we had as a knowledge, that was used for making equipments and machineries. That was the stage in industry 1.0. And subsequently, there was an further improvement, and it came as industry 2.0, where we can say that automobile industry came into existence. Mass production was happening, and there we were relied on electrical sources and equipments, and still labor intensive was the mode, where people were the main force to run the equipments, and it was mass production which was into existence. Then came the scenario where industry 3.0 with automated production industry started, where you had intelligence to the system, but it was largely controlled by equipments with sensors, and it was a CNC machine, we can say, which was in the 19th century and 20th century, where we started getting CNC machines. That was industry 3.0. Now it is the scenario of 21st century, where we can see intelligence is imparted in industry 4.0, and a user with a cloud computing and with big data, and also industrial IoT into existence. Industrial production is automated. That is what is industry 4.0. We can say there are so many advantages with IoT technologies and digitalization of manufacturing, where we can say 50% increase in productivity, 30 to 50% reduction in the total machine downtime, which is actually phenomenal, we can say. That is all kudos to the industry 4.0 technology. And also maybe we can say there is a reduction in time to market. You can say any product which we anticipate or which we think to be built to any business group, it can be delivered as much fast as possible with right product to the users. That I can say. So what next? So any company, we can say, when they want to get digitized, there are two steps, we can say. Totally, there are 6 steps, but 2 stages which are on the left hand side of the screen, where you can see computerization and connectivity. These 2 are very important aspects of digitalization for any industry, we can say. So when these 2 happens, then the next industry 4.0 can be seamless. What it enables you to do is, it gives you a visibility of the complete organization, manufacturing cycle, processes, services, whatever is the industry type, that will become visible. So without first 2 stages in prominent way, this visibility is unlikely to happen. So when this visibility happens, then there is a transparency. There is no information which is at any department level or at any function level and at equipment level. It is not existing at silos. It is getting connected. So there is a transparency, inter-transparency between operating schemes that happens. And then you have got a predictive capacity that will be enabled into the system, because you will be knowing what is going to happen next with the version of data what you have. So that is what will enable you to have being prepared methodology for adopting the future versions. And then what exactly happens beyond this? That is adaptability to the situation. Okay, this is what is very important and that will enable the systems to optimize the operational efficiencies. So we can see with IoT, it is expected that there is going to be approximately $1.2 to 3.7 trillion globally by 2025. This is what is going to be the generation of finance, what we can say. This all is going to happen with operational efficiencies, maintenance, maintainability, supply chain management systems, inventory, logistics, all this are going to be there. And this we can see in overall industry level, there are around 22 billions of IoT connected devices across the globe. And this is expected something in 2018, this was a statistics we can say. And by 2025 and 2030, this is expected to be doubling. By 2020, it is expected to have 30 billion IoT connected sensors devices. That is what is going to be the future. So what is the scenario of industry today? So largely, if we can say industry today, the expectations are very huge because the time to market is very, very meager and it is very less. So we can say the industry jargon will be what we can do more with less. That is one of the major important aspect of business to exist as well. So I can say like operations and processes are largely becoming digital, even across MSMEs to large scale companies, large organizations. When you say when a big organization is there, they anticipate their ancillary suppliers also to have digitalized platform because they monitor them also and they monitor their deliveries based on their ancillary performance. So that is also one important aspect we should consider. And also there is one more requirement where it happens that to deliver real value operationally and strategically. This is also one of the important aspects which industry is now foreseeing and forecasting to do it. And also there is a big change in the industry in this century that there is a product life cycle. It has got changed from a product design orientation to a product life cycle. It means that the industry wants to understand what is happening in the life cycle of the product, though not only for the manufacturing cycle which they have undertaken, but to the existence of the equipment at their customer bases and then its performance and its their reliability. That is also becoming part of the industry as on date. And also there is a good amount of reduction in the digital data management systems where you can see earlier to get a data connection or to get a sensor, it was very costly and it was not affordable. But largely now it has got scenarios got changed in the globe. So it is easily possible that we have digital data managements implemented with very minimal costs. And then customized product approach. This we can see that any person when they want an equipment, they always want to have their fantasy like colors, the equipments with reference to their customized approaches, what they want. Now you even get laptops where you can say that I want a USB connection only at the front end of my laptop. So to this level of customization, it is possible. Maybe we can remember some year, a decade before when Dell introduced their supply chain management, where there was completely digitalized platform. The moment you customize your laptop, you used to get as per your customized requirement within say 15 days to your home. So that was the level of digitalization which many industries have implemented and they have even earned a lot from it. And it is a big learning to the complete ecosystem, what I can say. And also next important aspect to all this industry today is digital thread. So digital thread is very important aspect when we say industry 4.0 and then which is very relevant to our topic, which is digital twin, which will also applicable to digital twin hydraulics, which I can say. Digital thread. So what exactly digital thread is related in how it is related to digital twin is I can explain. But before that, there are some roadblocks to digital thread to be in position. So what we can see is the roadblocks to be acted upon for any digital thread to exist in an organization. It will be department silos. So where the data, the equipment, inline process data, everything should not be in department silos, where it means that the data should be digitized format and it should be available to across value chain of the product. And also data management practices that has to be worked upon. And also capitalization on enormous data. There will be so many industries where data are available, but it might not be acted upon. So these three are something which is very important for a digital thread to be in existence. And also I will say, when we work on digital thread, it is like building continuity across products, processes, and people. These are very, very important. Where you can see in my slide, where the concept to the retirement of the product, the complete connection of the system is important. And as well as in every aspect, they are connected to the processes, the data which is collected, and the data with which it has been analyzed, and the decisions which are taken at the design stage or at the manufacturing stage, operation state, everything is very important. Only then this life cycle will enable to the next step, which is called the digital twin. So what exactly digital twin in this jargon it means is, with a digital thread we can call it, it is a single source of data where the truth is creating consistency, collaboration, and alignment by real-time data synchronization. This is very important because you should have a single source of data across value chains. Only then the collaboration will happen, alignment across value chains will happen, and that should be real time. only with real time, when these data are synchronized and both upstream and downstream are done, then you get to the next version, which is called digital twin. And I can say largely the data which is being produced across the globe with the present IoT scenarios and digital twin, which is already existing globally, we can say that data are predicted to be beyond 150 zettabytes. So people can imagine, many of us will be knowing terabyte, maybe petabyte or pebibyte. So this is something like 10 power 9 of terabyte. So 150 zettabytes of data is expected by 2025. This is going to be the voluminous of the data, which is under synthesis and which will be the decision making environment. And this can be one of the aspects that where we can say, when we go to the next slides of digital twin, we will understand these data are largely generated by all the sensors on the equipments or on the machineries which is existing presently. Digital twin. So you can see there is one image on the right corner where you can see this is an engine data where General Electric, where they have got digital twin implementation in their engines. So this gives approximately 1 TB of data per day. So you can imagine the number of sensors or the number of data which we are going to get and how it is going to get processed. That is more important. So this is what is going to be the concept. And digital twin, if we say, there are too many definitions. So it is largely based on the people's perceptions. And it is like academia, when they say they have their own perceptions of a digital twin. But we can say, so some people, they say that digital twin is something like an as-built product, which reflects largely on the manufacturing defects and then continuous improvements which has happened on the product, and how it is going to have wear and tear on the equipments, and how it is going to be in use when it is happening. How are you collating it and making the same in the as a reflection in the physical, as well as what is there in the physical, you try to get it on the digital version. So that is one of the thought process which few people say. But we can see there is one more definition which is largely uttered by people, or it is available on the open source, which we can say it is a sensor enabled digital model of a physical object that simulates the object in a live setting. So this is also one more concept which largely is debated upon or spoke upon, that it is a sensor enabled digital model of a physical object. Okay, but however, I would like to make it little more simpler. So I will say digital twin in simple terms. We can say this is going to be a fundamentally an evolving digital profile. So because why it is called evolving is, as we go along, where I showed you, or which I told you as a fourth stage of digital twin, which is going to get existing into the physical world. So that is something like it is an evolving digital profile of the historical and current behavior of the physical object. So because when we say historic data, that is going to be a method where somebody is going to analyze the data and also have to have some set rules with AI into place, machine learning into place, with which you can have certain rules which is defined, and that can be controlling your physical object, where it can also enable a business performance by checking the physical system at time to time and making some questions to it. Is there any performance degradation? Is there anything as an input which is to be done, as a maintenance which is to be done? All that is going to happen. So that is what I can say is, as a digital twin is going to be an evolving digital profile. So when we want to get into digital twin, so I can say digital twin has got, one is the digital thread, which we saw in the earlier slides, where data digitalization is required and then process digitalization is required, where we can say that largely most of the industries are in this scenario, that the digitalization is done, process digitalization is also done. But one we can say as a very tipping point, which is like transformation. So that transformation is a challenge, because that transformation needs to have some adaptability. So, and it is very crucial because you will have to analyze what is to be done and which all equipments are to be thought for consideration of a digital twin. This with a proper set of ground rules. There are so many articles and journals available with which we'll have to analyze where we'll have to get into digital environment and where we'll have to get into digital twin requirement itself. So with this ground rules and questioning, we can get into digital optimization, wherein which we can optimize our process and the operation style which we are doing it. And also this happens by having our value added services which in existence with the sensors what we have on the equipment. So that is going to enable us for a digital transformation. So these two are the important aspects where we'll have to differentiate with the digitization and transformation. So when we say digital twin, so this comes in largely three forms. So the first form, we can say that it is a digital prototype. Okay. So when we say digital prototype, this is largely, we can say, when the product is to be made, you have a digital prototype. So that is like you make the model, you make the drawings, you make the bill of material, and from this you make a product. So this is one which is before the product is made, you have a digital prototype in place. This is one of the way of making a digital version. Now, when we say digital instance, this is the second way where you have a product and you have a digital version of the product. So both are in existence. So what you will do is, largely many of us might be in this stage where you have a product and it is an individual product which is made from a digital version of the data. And it will also have some process data, testing data, and the life cycle details of the instance. Everything is captured in a digital version. Okay, so when you have this as a digital instance, from this, it is very easy to get matured to a digital aggregate. So when you say digital aggregate, so what exactly it means? So this is the important version for a digital twin, I can call it, where you integrate the digital instances data, what all we have achieved in the digital instance, we try to communicate to each other and we aggregate it as a data. And then we say that there are so many products of the same kind which is made, and you enable the communication from all these products. Then it becomes a really intelligent data and to act upon them. So that is going to be the digital twin, the last version, which is called digital aggregate. So at three instances, all these three instances are very important. When you have all the three instances data in digital version, then it becomes that digital twin is going to be a simple task to get along. So now I'll just get into, though I've given some introduction, I feel that we'll have one video to think over and it will give some glimpse on the real version of data, which I want to say on digital twin. Then I'll get into the next version of data. So you can see from the video, we have always heard about telling or hearing from people that sky is the limit. I can say digital twin has given a new introduction that is called space is the limit, because even NASA, when they started this journey for a capsule from space, when they wanted to have some communication or some retrieval back when they had a issue, they started using this digital concept where they enabled the complete study on a digital environment, and then they found out the way to adopt it on the space. So that is when this also started, that space is the limit for digital twin, I can say. So maybe to get into something on related to hydraulics, I'll just give you one case study on a excavator. So since we have seen on the digital twin how it is an evolving communication between the physical asset and the virtual asset. So when there is a intercommunication between a physical asset and a virtual asset, then only this digital twin actually works, and it will help you to get the benefits out of it. So this we can see digital twin in hydraulics. We'll come to the specific topic when we say in hydraulics, how we can use it as a hydraulic fraternity. So largely we can say when we were working earlier, maybe for me, hydraulics has been something like very interesting topic in my career, where I started to understand the muscle power of hydraulics. Anything when you want to move big, anything which is huge, the first thing comes to mind is, okay, to make the system compact, but the load scenario to handle it is huge. Then the first thing comes is hydraulics, because with which you can have a compact system, or you can have a noiseless system, and the power is like with Blaise Pascal, what I can say, what is the power you can get with hydraulics is nothing with reference to any other source we can call it. So when we say an excavator, there are so many actuators, so many systems, and there is a requirements of link mechanisms, everything's are there. So when we have, there is a cross communication which is to be established between a physical and virtual model, where you can see on the left hand side, we have got a model of an excavator, and all the items which are required, it is mapped. And for all these actuators and the drive systems for a motor or with a slew drive, when we have, all these are mentioned on the right hand side of the system, where you can say hydraulics are there, transmissions are there, engine controls and electrical. So all these aspects are there. Maybe for this, I've given this as a representation model because some of the excavators on this side might not have exactly maybe a torque converter or a transmission. So we'll just take it for an example, that when you have so many systems on the equipment in existence, then we can have so many sensors also established, maybe for a pressure transducer. Maybe we can have a GPS location stating the location of the equipment, giving us a real-time environmental data, and also taking on the pressure sensors, and also accelerometers on the systems. All that we can keep it, and the battery capacities, the fuel pump capacities. All these are few of the sensors which can be selected by the user or selected by the person who wants to get as a digital twin. All these can be put on equipments. And when we have this cross communication, we can take that sensors are fitted on the respective assets, which we can do it. And these parameters are recorded with timestamp, with exact state of the physical asset, whether it was working. You can also get to know how many hours the equipment has been working and at which environmental conditions. This also can be done, where many industries, and even at L&T, we have got a construction division, which is the major EPC contract, where we have implemented digital twin largely, and all the equipments in whichever geography it is there, we were able to see the downtime of an equipment, unused time of an equipment, and relocate those excavators or dumpers, dippers at a location where there is a need. So that is also possible by creating a sensor based or a digitalized data available. And when we get this parameters or from the data of the system, then digital model get all this data in dynamic states with the time series and location, which I mentioned to you. When this is input as a digital model which is given, then we will be able to correlate the data and understand it, analyze it, and then compare with the actual output which is desired out of an equipment. So this comparison can be done on a digital environment with the preset rules defined by the designer based on the desired output of the equipment. So when there is any mismatch, then it gives an insight to the team which is working. This can also be done by a maintenance team or a through life support team, which they can envisage a predictive maintenance which is required and improvement to be suggested to the physical asset. This can easily be taken up. And any abnormal data, those can be verified. And if there is a physical mishap which is going to be expected out of an abnormal data which is received on a real-time basis, then the virtual asset can tell us what is to be done as a feedback to the physical system. And I can say Tesla is one of the simplest example which I can state for this, because all Tesla cars which is delivered has got a sensor based data and it communicates back to Tesla. And Tesla has got a complete database of every equipment's performance. And what they also do is, based on the equipment's performance, if in case if there is a motor which is not working, if there is a steering gear motor, or if there is any issue in your window when it is not working, the motor is not expected to work in the phenomenon it is working, then they have got intelligent software which again imparts from the Tesla database to the Tesla car which you own, and it automatically corrects the system of the consumer. So to that level of cloud-based computing is existing in the real scenario, which we can say. And just before I get into one more hydraulic case study, I felt it will be appropriate to make the crowd which is available also post lunch. I wanted to keep it little interactive as a session. So I'll just play another small video and I'll get into one more important aspect of our hydraulics, which is a real good case study which we have undertaken. So I'll just put on this small video for all of you.
Digital twins, the innovation backbone of the future, delivering virtual representations of real-world products, systems, and cities. For example, the digital twin of an electric motor not only showcases form, but also analyzes functions, from the rotation of the shaft to thermal conductivity to data from sensors and beyond. What's more, the digital twin continuously evolves thanks to the flow of data, user experience feedback, and new input, and it's greatly impacting development, production, and operation. In development, a product's behavior can be simulated and tested long before a physical prototype has been built. Siemens utilized the digital twin to develop a world record-setting electric aircraft motor that not only weighs 50 kilograms, but is also 5 times more powerful than comparable electric motors. But it doesn't stop there. Digital twins also unleash the power of 3D printing. In a recent Siemens study for gas mixing systems, insights from the simulation of form and flow behavior were combined with generative algorithms. The result? A truly unique channel shape and configuration, one significantly more efficient than anything previously designed. Even entire factories down to individual machines can be simulated and tested. For instance, robots. It's difficult for them to perform milling tasks because large forces in the manufacturing process lead to inaccurate movements. But with the digital twin, the forces that push the robot away from the milling path can be calculated and compensated in real time, keeping the robot in its path. When it comes to operations, digital twins can compare the sensor data of a real point in real time with the simulation of its point. The availability of the point parallel to operations can be reliably predicted, and sudden disruptions become a thing of the past. But this is just the beginning, and Siemens is already driving the future. Merging digital twins with artificial intelligence allows computers to independently design advanced products. Siemens is realizing this potential right now with Californian startup Hackrod, which aims to build customized sports cars. For development, production, and operation, the digital twin breaks with traditional paradigms and opens up extraordinary possibilities. That's why digital twins are the innovation backbone of the future.
Siemens, ingenuity for life.
So I hope it was interesting version where we can say there is there's no limit. So whatever a complete industry can be converted to a digital twin. So that is possible. So I'll get into the next version. So this is one of the case study. This is also related to hydraulics, where I can say we had a requirement specifically for actuator, which was supposed to be working at a speed of say 4 meters per second. We can assume an hydraulic cylinder, which is supposed to work at 4 meters per second, where I am supposed to operate a system which is having a hydraulic cylinder. It has to move a load of approximately 4 tons at that speed. That was the requirement. So then we as a designers of hydraulics, we had when we want to have this, okay, we will have a complete power source. Then we also configure to have accumulator bank, which can give a surge, or it actually acts as a capacitor of an electronic system where you got a current which is given. So hydraulic power source accumulated on an accumulator is the one which can give you that type of movement at that speed, because this accrued to be in the range of 3000 liters of oil. 3000 liters per minute of oil. So that is the flow rate which is required for the equipment to move. So when we configured the system with first principles of hydraulics, we made a hydraulic system. Design was conceived and it was converted to hydraulic components, where we had almost most of the hydraulic OEM components were put into the system, be it for the safety of the system, be it for the performance of the system, be it for the sensors of the system, because that is also one important aspect. When we started doing this project, we had a thought process that to control the system in a closed loop, we necessarily need to have a sensor in the system. So there we used one of the biggest valve of Moog Hydraulics also to have a closed loop control system. And then when we started doing it with so many sensors in place, then we wanted to also to have when we have a closed loop system, then we want to have a PID controller. So that is also a need. So then we have to have a plant model for this. So this all started with a small concept that this is the requirement, and you start making a first principle design and then get into realization of the hydraulic complete component, where you can see the physical model which is realized at the center of the screen. And then on the right hand side, you can see the actual 3D model kind of thing, which was a made up equipment. When the realization happened, it actually made the same. There was no change between the 3D model and the physical model. Now, when this equipment got installed on the system, then we are supposed to have a control and automation team in place, which actually works on the first principle calculations, what we have evolved, and the hydraulic components, what we have selected. That will be an input to a control and automation guy, where he starts deriving on a plant model and he analyzes this requirement as a output requirement and input available. So these two are the data which is given to a control and automation guy. And this will give you some flow of a digital twin, how you can also do it at your places in your hydraulic system designs. Maybe it can be a small component level or a equipment level or a process level or a industry level. Wherever you want, you can implement. And this was a case study which we feel it will help all of the industry people or industry fraternity which is there on this call. So when we say, I will cover this into 4 segments. One is the simulation plant model, and then profile shaping signal, what we have undertaken, and then actual result comparisons, what we have undertaken, and also on the gain setting comparison, which we got to know at the later date after realization of the system. So once when we say a plant model which is to be generated, so we have generated on a Simulink software. This is based on the hydraulic circuit, what has been done by a hydraulic designer. So when the system requirement is done, the hydraulic designer will do the hydraulic circuit with which all the components will be selected. And in the Simulink software, you'll have to put in all the data, because all the mathematical models or the relation models for every hydraulic component is available on the softwares. So that you'll have to take in. But based on that model, what you create, okay, you will have to start inputting data. Whatever data is available by the hydraulic circuit designer based on the anticipated output of the equipment. So that have to be incorporated on this, where you can see on the left hand side, there is a power unit as a tab. And on the right hand side, you can see one is the flow from accumulator and the accumulator, what it comes to the system. And also below that, you've got a plant model. So that is the intended purpose of this power source, how it is going to get used. So when we do this, I'll just get into one more slide where I'll explain you on the power unit. So once when you have, this is a schematic of the complete system when we wanted, but into this complete system, we also have to define further more components into it to get a better output. So this you can see for the pump, reservoir and hydraulic fluid, which you will have to model. Since the hydraulic circuit is known, in physical scenario, what we would have done erstwhile, when we wouldn't have done as a plant model, we would have done a hydraulic circuit. Then you would have realized the physical model, and then you would have set and a real time, maybe based on the load, you set the relief valves, and based on the load, you set the compensators of the pump. And if it is a variable displacement pump, okay, you also see your flow rate. And then what is the return line velocities, what is coming? Is there any operational issue in the system? What is the system overall relief well to be set, and the hydraulic oil verification, everything it was supposed to be done in the physical version. But now in the plant model, you can give all your input data to the system and ensure that what is the density of the system, density of the oil, what is the viscosity of the oil, what is the bulk modulus, every data can be given to the system. And also your variable displacement pumps, when you have, there are few characteristics which is defined in the software. So those also can be put in the software to get a right output which is intended. Now, when this pump source is already done, then we have got one more, this accumulators. Now you can even see your pre-charge pressure, what you'll have to do on the system, what is the pressure which is going to be when you start discharging the accumulator, and how it is going to behave with the, whether it is an adiabatic source or a other piston displacement, whether it is a thermal conductivity, whatever is to be defined, those can be defined on the model itself to enable the output desired. And also you can see the what is the flow measurement which is coming out of the accumulators. This also can be done on the system. And when you say as an overall power plant, okay, once you define your hydraulic source, your hydraulic power pack, pump, everything you define, then you can define your hydraulic accumulators. If it is there, that bank also can be defined. And then here you can see that there are two segments. One is on the left hand side, we can see a control system which is existing, and the right hand system, we can see an actuator. So this actuator is the one which is the desired output. Even on this actuator, we can give all the pressure monitoring systems, flow measurements, and what is the desired outputs of a proportional valve, which is a move valve which you want, that also can be given. And this enablement through a controller, which can be done. So this plant model will start giving you data as you input to it. Now for this input, when we say this input is to be given as an injection in, for our case, it was a gain input which were to be given because this actuator was supposed to move at a velocity of 4 meters per second. And that was something like, you can imagine 1.5 meters of stroke, which is to be done in 600 milliseconds. That was the requirement. So for this, you have to have a acceleration profile for the actuator, and then a constant profile and a deceleration profile. Only then you can achieve the desired motion in 0.6 seconds. So that when we did it, we also made a controller. So this controller also was made on the control and automation team, which has to derive, from which we were able to define the proportional values, integral values, and derivative values, which is a normal method which is available on the Simulink, which you will have to define. And this controller has to be defined by the system automation system. Only then these values can go for a physical asset when it is to be done on the system. This were something like an input which was given to the control automation team, where you can see on the, there is a first graph on the left corner where you can see a time which is on the x-axis and position in the y-axis, where you want to give a profile which is required. Then for which, to achieve this profile, there should not be any jerks in the system. So to that, we have to give a velocity profile to the system. So these largely are defined by the first principles by the designer, but these can be verified in the plant model, which is possible in the softwares. Once we do this, you get some proportional integrate derivative values as a gains. So these gains can be put on the first system, and you can physically see what is happening, whether your desired output which the plant model has got, whether you're achieving it or not. Once if it is not happening, then maybe you might have to refine your plant model, which can easily be done. So then with that, vice versa thought process from a physical asset to a digital asset, when you start doing it, then you get an intelligence to the system. That is what is going to be. Now in this case, we can see the profile what was anticipated by a designer, that was mostly reliable, and it was able to achieve in a plant model with the inputs what is given on the Simulink software. So now when we did this on a physical system, so you can see the gray color and the orange color. These are the two curves. When the ideal motion is expected like this and actual motion, we were almost able to match the actual motion desired with some maybe in this case there was a lead in our motion. It was ideal motion was little early, but we can say that at the end it was having a lag. So this can be happening. So which you can very minutely correct your PID controller values or the gain values, and you will be able to match the value, match the desired output. But when you do this, when we saw this as a control parameters, we can see on the left hand side of the screen where you can see the KP, KI, KD values, what gain values we had considered after the output in actual implementation, and as per simulation we got some values on the right hand screen. But this needs an evaluation, where now going forward, which we are anticipating is to convert this into a digital twin, which we had a plan earlier. Now we are trying to target it so that we will be able to match both the physical version. And when we do this, we also understand that there can be many physical parameters, be it a friction of the system, be it the manufacturing inaccuracies of the system, be it the hydraulic performance with reference to environmental conditions of the system. So all those are to be capitalized, taken the data from the physical asset and to be input to the plant model, and you establish a working methodology and understand the data. Once we do this analysis with the data, then we will be able to correlate and map the physical asset and a digital asset as a twin. Once this twin is done, then with due course, when the sensors are interconnected and it is computing on day-to-day basis, then the evolving digital model can be easily achieved. So this is what is a overall concept which I wanted to explain in this presentation to the team, that hydraulic fraternity, that digital twin in hydraulics is very much possible. And not only to stop here, I'll show you one more small video which will give you an insight to the audience that digital twin to what scale. Now we saw this one for a small actuator, which is possible and which is we have already seen as a reality. But however, I can tell you one classical example where Singapore is one country where they have made a digital twin of complete Singapore city itself. So that video I'll showcase it to you.
The cooperation with Singapore is about creating this digital representation of the city in 3D so that we can 3D experience the city itself to evaluate solutions, understand how it works, and understand how it can be improved.
Singapore faces a lot of urban challenges. The researchers are trying to address some challenges through modeling and simulation. And what we're going to do is to have a unified 3D models of Singapore. That's why we started the program Virtual Singapore.
It aims to synergize all the 3D efforts from various agencies of the government onto a common platform so that all public agencies can make use of a common 3D digital city model of Singapore.
It's the most significant project in the world to demonstrate the power of the 3D experience platform and the 3D experience city strategy. It's like many programs that we did in the past with industry, but it's multi-industry.
When we learn about the 3D experience platform, we have a gut feel that it has capabilities to allow us to build a virtual Singapore.
So if you look at the product innovation platform and taking that into a citywide context, the power of the platform comes from actually bringing together different types of information, different types of data.
3D Experience City can improve the life and the quality of life and planning in Singapore significantly because it creates unique data referential. And furthermore, it offers a design environment, an authoring environment in which you can simulate if-when scenarios within it.
Once you have data and you tag them into a 3D map, that allow us to visualize some of this data and spot patterns, spot trends that can actually help us, especially in Housing and Development Board. This will further improve the way that we plan and design our towns and estates.
Singapore is a city-state, and there's very little room that actually we can experiment with our plans. Virtual Singapore eliminates the necessity of trying these plans out in the actual physical environment, which we have very little space.
Today, the world is fueled by massive amount of data. And moving forward, we will also take in dynamic real-time information like IoT devices. We developed the National Science Experiment to capture the urban environmental data and allow our students to gain insights from the data collected. We can stream the data into Virtual Singapore and have it represented in the virtual world.
We're measuring temperature, pressure, humidity, light, noise levels, infrared temperature, as well as motion and counting steps. So it's really useful as an analyst to look at the data in 3D because we end up having broad questions which we can then drill down and see the details using such a platform as a Virtual Singapore platform.
We have seen a large amount of interest from other cities across the globe as to what is actually going on here in Singapore.
We're trying here with this project in particular to harmonize product, life, and nature in order to arrive not only at a, let's say, smart city, but more importantly, perhaps as a more sustainable, smarter living in the city.
I enjoy the frank and openness with Dassault Systems, not only with the R&D team, but with senior management at large. Dassault Systems' forward-looking and planning framework gels well with Singapore.
Dassault Systèmes has a long story of partnership from the last 30 years with many companies. But this one is with the government. This one is really to share a vision for the city for the next 50 years.
This virtual world of a city is going to be a first in the world, but it's also going to be game changer to think about the city of the future, and that's what we are doing together with Singapore.
So I can tell you, so you can see that digital twin for a complete city has also been enabled. So this is what the digital twin can actually do. And also I would like to say that at L&T we are doing largely on digital twin, where our oil and refinery division is making plants which are digital twin, and it is having the complete control of the complete system with the artificial intelligence in place. So this is also an existing which is going on. So I am done with the presentation. Mr. Avinash, we can take up questions.
Really, you took us to in a different world. So it's a very fantastic presentation, and then the participants must have enjoyed it also. As an academician, I would like to say that we have made compartments in the hydraulics, in mechanical systems, or in control systems, but such integration is seen, and that's the real reflection of the experience. Now, with this, I would like to put few questions. Those questions are there in chat box. Here is a question from Mr. Vinod Kaneri. What is the difference between digital twin and CAD simulation?
See, CAD simulation is what...
What is the difference between?
Yeah. See, CAD simulation is something you give an input and you get an output. Okay, so that is not a smart data. It gives you an output with which you can analyze what was your expectation and how the system performed against your expectation. But with the digital twin, it happens that what actually happened, you know, physical asset, what you wanted, now you did it in a CAD environment and you found out some results. In the physical environment, did you get the same results? If there is a change in the results, there could have been some change in the physical asset because of which the output did not match. So this cross communication, or the from virtual data to physical data, you analyze and get back to your digital asset and then revalidate it. That is what you try to connect with the digital twin. Hope I have answered the question.
Yeah. The next question is that from Banmurthy sir. What is the system response requirement for high-speed application?
See, mostly for high-speed responses, you select your valve systems. Specifically, if we take hydraulics, if we take a direction control valve of Danfoss, it will give you that it has got a response of 400 millisecond. And if you get a direction control valve, it will have somewhere around 800 millisecond. If you take a Moog valve, some valves you get it at 11 millisecond of operational speed. So these responses largely are defined by industries when they give us a hydraulic component. So these all becomes an input to your plant models to see the response. And further to that, if there is any further change, it will become the hydraulic system response. then you will have to account it by validating your physical asset and then refining the complete design itself to a minor extent to say that hydraulics also has got some stiffness matrix. So that is also modeled in your plant when you want to do a digital version. So that also can be done it. Hope I have answered the question.
I hope that the answer and then it satisfies the. These are the two questions. There might be many questions, but those might not have reached to us. So, sir, you presented it, and then it was a fantastic presentation, and I hope all the participants have enjoyed it. So, thank you, sir. Thank you from the FPSI Pune chapter and from the national.
Yeah, thank you very much. I would like to thank FPSI for giving this opportunity, and this is for the hydraulic fraternity. That is what I will say. Thank you.